Well, hey there, idiots. Welcome back to Observe. In today's video, we're going to be analyzing the nonverbal communication of Phillip Schofield. More on everything centered around that in just a second. Let's go ahead and roll the intro first. Today's video is brought to you by Factor, the new approach to meal delivery that's making eating healthy easier than ever. Factor delivers fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your doorstep, and I can tell you from very personal experience that these meals are genuinely delicious. Whether you're too busy to cook this summer or you're looking for an easy calorie-conscious meal option, Factor has got you covered. With over 34 chef-prepared, dietitian-approved weekly options, you can enjoy mouth-watering meals with around or less than 550 calories per serving. And the best part is that they are ready to eat in just about 2 minutes, so you can spend more time soaking up the summer sun or doing other activities rather than cooking. Factor understands that everyone has different dietary needs and preferences, from keto to calorie smart, vegan plus veggie, and even protein plus. They've got something for just about everyone. And if you want to mix it up, you can add a protein to a veggie or vegan dish each week. Now, something reassuring that I discovered about Factor is that they not only care about making great meals, they are also committed to sustainability. They offset 100% of their delivery emissions, use 100% renewable electricity, and feature sustainably sourced seafood in their meals. This makes it possible to have a positive impact while also still enjoying quality, flavorful food. So, if you feel like Factor might be a good fit for your dietary and lifestyle needs, head over to factor75.com or click the link below and use code OBSERVE50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. With Factor, you'll be able to enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered right to your door. No prep, no mess, just satisfaction in every bite. Again, visit factor75.com or click the link below and use code OBSERVE50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. Thank you again to Factor for sponsoring this video, and back to your regularly scheduled programming. Phillip Schofield is a well-known presenter that has been reportedly involved in an affair with a younger male colleague. This revelation has caused shockwaves in the entertainment industry, leaving Schofield, as described in an article by The Guardian, utterly broken. He has remained secluded in his London home, reportedly in a state of deep emotional turmoil. The breaking of the news has devastated Schofield, who never intended on having his personal life become public. The affair has reportedly taken a significant toll on him. It's disheartening to witness someone such as Schofield go through and be accused of something such as this, especially after his professional legacy was centered around kindness and hope. The affair has also impacted Schofield's personal family. He has been married to his wife, Stephanie, for nearly 3 decades, and they have 2 grown-up daughters. The disclosure of the affair has undoubtedly strained their relationships. Schofield's representative has released a statement expressing remorse and requesting their privacy during this challenging period. The public's response has been mixed, with some people expressing empathy for Schofield and his personal struggles, while others debate the ethics of his actions. The consequences of this affair are still unfolding, affecting both Schofield's career and personal life. And today we're going to go through and analyze footage from an interview that he did with BBC. That's enough with the backstory. Let's go ahead and dive into the footage itself.
Philip, thank you for speaking to me and to the BBC. You've had quite the week. How are you?
It's like a weird numbness. I know that's a selfish point of view.
I'm going to go ahead and pause here. So what I'm noticing non-verbally between the two is a relatively light form of mirroring occurring. So both of them are sitting across from each other, crossed legs, similarly mirrored. So that just lets us know that they're at least on the same page for this. This could be prep for the actual interview. This could be due to the emotional state of everyone. Now, what I will note is immediately after being asked about how he's doing, we're seeing some of the more micro movements in Schofield's nonverbal communication across his face, and those can be more difficult to control. So I would be leaning towards him feeling a genuine emotion during this time. Let's actually see how it plays out.
But you come to a point where you just think, how much are you supposed to take? If all of those people that write all of that stuff, do they ever think that there's actually a person at the other end?
I'm going to go ahead and pause here. So Schofield has been in reporting these sorts of circles for a minute. So he knows everything that goes on the behind the scenes of this. And right now he is calling forth a fairly important part that seems to be overlooked at times as the actual human being on the other side of the article of whatever's being written, which is true. And that is something that's difficult to consider. Along with that, though, it can be used as a point of manipulation to try to pull in that side of things. So far, what I'm seeing non-verbally behind that, it doesn't seem as though Schofield is trying to manipulate here. However, this is something that I'm still aware of. It can be used as a manipulation tactic to be able to win over a person's sympathy and emotional backing. Let's see how that plays out.
And so, here I am.
Are you feeling okay to do this? Are you feeling strong enough to do this interview?
Yeah, I have to.
Why? Why do you want to do this interview?
Because there is an innocent person here who didn't do anything wrong.
I'm going to go ahead and pause this here. So what I'm noticing non-verbally is a substantial nose shake throughout this. Along with this, he's also having some substantial frowning and mouth shrugs in there. Now, all of those are centered around the negative. It's a negative strain of emotion. And he's saying, because there's a person who is innocent in all of this, and it's a pretty substantial nose shake, he's also saying, yeah, I have to, and it's a substantial nose shake. So there is a conflict that is existing inside Schofield at this moment. Now, a lot of these prevalent nose shakes that we're seeing would be related to that you would not believe. Yes, I would. I am going to do this. You would not believe how hard it is. Things along those lines. So that is popping up here. So far, what I'm noticing with his pitch and his tone, they are very, very soft. So if that does spike from that area, then that will let us know kind of what the emotional strand is that's coming off from this. But right now, his main verbal thing that he's saying, the only reason that he's doing this is not to clear himself, but to clear an innocent person in this situation, which this seems like a morally upstanding move. Let's see how that goes.
Who is vulnerable and probably feels like I do.
Yeah, a lot of my questions are going to be uncomfortable and, let's face it, intrusive, but you've chosen this opportunity to tell your side of the story. And there are questions that your viewers, all the people who supported you over the years, including your family, will want answers to. There's also, of course, lots of questions for ITV in all this. You mention this young man, and at the centre of recent events is a young man who, together with many others in the media we're not going to name, under Article 8 of the Human Rights Act, he has a right to privacy, and he's not here today to give his own account of events. When did you last speak to him?
As I engaged the lawyer for him.
I will note already we're shifting tones. You can hear the force behind Schofield's tone change from this emotional recollection that he was just working on to this now more projected, confident tone, as if largely because he's just recollecting information instead of the emotional side behind it. So that also lets us know that Schofield is aware, at least, of how he is presenting himself to the camera, which makes sense. He's been doing this for some years. So he's trying to portray the emotionality where he wants the emotionality to be portrayed, and then trying to cut it back to his cold factual side when he's just recollecting facts. So this is something to be able to keep in mind, that since this is a television, a filmed personality, they are familiar with being in front of the camera, that we'll have to take into account that they are going to have a lot of these smaller nonverbal things pretty well under wrap. Let's see how it plays out, though.
So he needed independent support, and so that was the last time.
Is that a few weeks ago now?
Yeah, a couple of weeks.
Okay. When you say that you engaged...
During that time, I would actually be inclined to believe Schofield with his recollection, breaking eye contact that way. There is the saying of where a person looks can tell you whether or not it's forced or fake, or if it's genuine recollection, auditory, visual. That has some backing to it, but in larger circles, it's not prevalent enough to be able to say, oh, this is for sure happening here. So we can't look at his eye direction and be like, he's recollecting false or anything along those lines. What you can see is that he is breaking eye contact to be able to look into space to help recollect those memories. And that is something that does pop up. A person will oftentimes break eye contact, sometimes narrow their eyes as they're trying to enter into that different state of recollection. So that does seem to be pretty synchronized. I would believe him so far. There hasn't been anything to really push back against. Let's just keep watching.
Engage his lawyer. Do you mean you're paying for the independent legal advice that he's getting? Okay. When did you first meet this young man in question? What were the circumstances?
I was invited by a friend of mine to go to a school, something I've done thousands of times. Whether it was immediately or sometime after, he said, will you follow him on Twitter because he's a fan? So I said, yeah, sure, no problem, which I did. And he probably came back saying thanks for the follow.
And he was, 15 at the time?
Yeah. I follow 11,300 people, and in all the time I've been on Twitter, there has never been any whiff of impropriety.
So he...
Okay, so now we're sitting at this area to where Schofield is bringing up this numbers game, which is still important details. They're important to make note of, to keep track of, that he is at least aware of the number of followers that he has and he follows, and because of that, that's giving him this ground to be able to stand on, that there has been no other sign or indication of this, which is very fair. From what I'm understanding, it seems as though this started off fairly simplistically, although still interesting, an interesting begin to a relationship just due to the age difference that's existent there. But right now this is just too early on in the interview to be able to say. Let's keep watching.
So he followed you on Twitter, you followed him back. Did you start having a sort of email exchange or direct message exchange of any kind?
Hardly at all. It was just all the way through, just on and off. And then he asked if he could visit the studios, work experience type of thing. I said, well, you come down and have a look for sure, which he did.
How old was he when he made that first? There's two stages there. How old was he when he first said to you, I'm interested in television? Was he 18 by that point?
19 then, I would think.
He was 19 by then. And then when he said...
I am just a little interested by the consistent no-shaking that is existent in here. However, what I will also note is that so far Schofield has been able to recollect fairly accurately all of the different facets of this narrative. He's recollected the dates, he recollected kind of the emotion around the dates, the dynamic that was existing between the two of them. And all of this has been rather smoothly done, which does push me to believe that, in fact, again, he is likely being authentic during this time with his recollection of things. And so what I was noticing when it comes around to the time of the person asking to come and visit the studio, we're seeing a little play out across Schofield's face. We see a little bit of action in the corner of his nose, and a mouth shrug sort of creep in there. That uncertainty and disgust is fascinating to me. Why that might exist in there, and the emotional boiling out of that, the uncertainty of not being sure perhaps what the motive behind the question was initially. Perhaps there's something that's negative related to that, as we saw by the disgust. It's difficult to say for sure, but we do see that little pop in nonverbal communication happen around there. So there is something of interest on that point. Let's see how that actually plays out with the rest of this. Then
when he said, could I come and have work experience, he would have been older than 19.
Well, just a more or less about the same time, because I'd organised it.
And what did he ask you for? So he asked you for work experience and you said, sure, come and have a look.
Well, I've done it all my life. I'm best friends with the people who got me into television. And I've always believed in paying it forward. And so...
I'm going to go ahead and pause here. So what I've noticed about Schofield during this time, he does start to have a little bit of uncertainty come in as he's starting to hunch up, and maybe some lopsided shrugging in there, which would be insecurity as well. So we're seeing that. We're also hearing his pitch increase. So this line of questioning is, I'm sure, entered around this idea of where people have been accusing him of grooming said person, that perhaps this was an early indicator of that. So he's feeling that defensiveness come up. You can hear the strain in his voice. You can see his nonverbal communication as he's trying to immediately explain away this opening of the door for this person to be able to just come on in. And from what I'm hearing, it sounds as if he has a kind-hearted reasoning behind what he did. Let's see if that plays out, and let's see if his nonverbal communication stays consistent.
That was my, it's just, didn't think about it, just did that.
When you look back now, if you were to look back at those messages,
that I find a little interesting. During that time, there's a lot of micro no shakes in there, which those are a lot less likely to be consciously controlled. And he also starts to have some verbal stammering and stuttering in there, as well as his psychological processing is increasing. So he's now sitting there trying to run through whatever he's presenting here, and it's causing him some difficulty. And I have to wonder, what is it around that would be causing the difficulty? It could be the emotional implications of it. If he was grooming the person at that point, then this would be a pretty heavy point of contention. But right now, it's still too early to say.
If you were to look back at those messages now, is there any sense in which you were flirting with him?
No. I've been 41 years in television. Nothing like this before. No accusations. I mean, this is all accusations.
Which is why I want to put them to you. And so, if you're honest now, again, brutally honest, if you think back to that, because a lot's happened since then, it's a long time ago. But if you think back to those initial interactions, was there any element of it which was sexual?
No.
So there'd been a period of several years when you didn't meet him.
Okay, so we're seeing the substantial lip compression and frown, mouth shrug in there. We're seeing a frenzy of blinking increase around this area where he's responding no. And so there is a lot of negative emotion attached to this. So the increase in blinking could be an increase in blocking gestures or expressions there, that act of when you say something wrong, you want to block it out. And that can be done through mouth covering. This can be done through prolonged blinkings, etc. So that could be the case of what's happening here. However, along with that, I will say that the nonverbal communication around the rest of it seems to be fairly synchronized. So we're still kind of battling with these two sides being presented even non-verbally. And just from personal experience here, most of the time what ends up happening is that it's not an extreme of either. It's somewhere nesting happily in the middle, that there are details that Schofield is not comfortable producing or saying because it makes him look or feel bad, and that there are some that are being blown way out of proportion by media, by other people's testimonies, things like that. Let's just see how that actually happens, though.
Yeah, I hadn't seen him.
And then when you met him in person, was there a little...
That was honestly quite synchronized. Yeah, I hadn't seen him. So it goes from the yes to the no. All of that is synchronized throughout, and that's important to be able to make note of. I would be pushed towards authenticity during this point. It seems as though this was not a very steady relationship that had been developing just from what I'm seeing non-verbally. Let's keep watching.
Was there a little moment of sexual attraction then even?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Okay. So to be absolutely clear...
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So that reiteration, absolutely not. Obviously, this is a point where Schofield really, really wants to hammer home that he is innocent in this specific vein of things, that there was not that dynamic to the relationship at that point, which in other areas, that repetition of absolutely or anything similar to that can be an indicator of possible deceit because they're pushing it so hard. With this, it does fit contextually with the question, and along with that, even the interviewer is going to use the wording absolutely as well. So this is something that fits a little bit more contextually, but it still is enough to ping my radar, so to speak, of recognizing that he does try to hammer that home multiple different times. However, again, even with that, nonverbal communication seems to be fairly synchronized. Let's just see.
So to be absolutely clear, how old was this young man when you first had any kind of sexual contact with him?
20.
20. Because I mean, this is obviously the nub of it, and for the record, and to put speculation to rest, let me ask you, Derek, did you have any kind of sexual relationship or sex with him when he was underage?
No, God, no. That, I think that is, and in my statement, it says, consensual relation.
Okay, so what I'm seeing here, I will say that when he's recollecting the age of this person, he does look into the same area that he was recollecting other details that seem to be pretty consistent and authentic. So while he's recollecting this age and he breaks eye contact and looks away, that does kind of fall in line with what we've seen non-verbally. But we hear this very plain, simple 20. It's a very softly produced word. Perhaps that lack of force could be an indicator of insincerity, but also seeing that nonverbal pattern of the look away in the same way that he did in the prior times that seemed to be pretty authentic, then this would lead me to believe that he's being authentic. Now, when it comes around to this question of what about underage relations, did that ever happen? He has a level of delayed surprise, and that lets me know that on some level, this is something that he wanted to really show his innocence in. That delay between the question asked and the actual response to it. He has no doubt been asked and posed this question of the underage side of things before, so it could not have been too surprising. But in this response still, he then says, well, in my statement that I gave, that's a very clear thing. So perhaps his response, the surprise that we're seeing, is in regards to that. Regardless, it is a little bit delayed. It pushes me to believe that it might be a little bit forced, which then just lets me know that Schofield is trying to orchestrate and behave in such a way that conveys his innocence in this situation, which makes everything, it's just something you have to keep in mind while watching.
Consensual relationship, fully legal. I mean, that was approved by both sides. That's no.
And then when he got work experience at This Morning, so he's 20 years old at this stage. He's someone who's come in.
Well, that was, I think, by that stage at 20, he'd done, there was he came in for a visit. We went out because he was going to be picked up, and I was worried that he might be on his own. So I said, well, we'll wait, let's go have a bite to eat. It wasn't a meal, it was just waiting for someone to pick him up. So it was, don't worry, don't go out there on your own and be picked up.
So at that point, you weren't in any kind of
So we're having a massive spike in verbal difficulty here, a lot of stuttering, a lot of stammering, a lot of false starts. So this lets us know that his psyche is racing right about now. He's trying to collect himself in this area, which then this would be, if I were to be looking at this would be an area of why did so much anxiety pop up around this first little meal, as he's describing here. He said it wasn't a meal, it was just let's get something to eat while we're waiting for somebody else. And so he's trying to explain that away, which lets us know that 1, he feels like it could be incriminating for him. 2, it probably has been pointed at and put under ridicule for being incriminating towards him in regards to all of this. But it still seems to be resting under this age difference side of things, to where the person in question is still 20 years old at the time, so legally an adult. So even with this spike here, even if there may have been something more to that meeting relationship side of things at that moment, it's still resting under this age side of things with the person being 20. So let's see.
You weren't in any kind of a relationship?
No, God, no.
Right, okay. How long after that was it that you had the beginnings of a sexual relationship with him?
He'd been working at the show for a few months, and we become mates. We were mates. We around the studios, you hang out together, you chat to each other, that sort of stuff. And then in my dressing room one day, something happened. Which, obviously I will regret forever, for him and for me, mostly him. But that happened maybe 4 or 5 times over the next few months. And I know it's unforgivable. But we weren't boyfriends, we weren't in a relationship. I was really in a mess with my own sexuality at the time. And it just happened.
How old was he at this stage?
20, 21.
And how
Okay, so during all of this time, I'm noticing the breaking of eye contact, looking around into various spaces to recollect, consistent nose shaking during that, also mixed in with the frowns, the lip compressions. These are all staying rather constant throughout, and throughout this as well, his verbal seems to be flowing rather smoothly. So all of that is pushing me to believe in the authenticity of this point so far. From what I'm just gathering from Schofield so far, I do feel, you know what, actually, I'll talk about it a little bit more in just a second. We've got about 1 minute and 20 seconds left of this portion of the interview, and then we can kind of summarize.
And how else were you trying to help him? What else were you doing to help him with this morning? Did you help him in terms of getting a show reel? Did you help him meet people? Because he had a lot of access.
I did a show, I helped him, and I think that this might have been before there'd been any contact. I helped him put his show reel together. So
after he gets more experience at this morning,
he's now got a job. So he was then given a job on his own merits because he was very good at his job. Everybody loved him,
Little nose shake in there. Everybody loved him. Little tiny micro nose shake. For some reason during that time, there's something that caused that. Why would we not want to believe that? Obviously, there was something that caused Schofield to go, everybody loved him. Perhaps it was you wouldn't believe that everybody loved him. Perhaps that was a pretty micro no one there. So perhaps there's a desynchronization point. There may have been more conflict around that than not. But what I'm still noticing is this synchronization from Schofield's nonverbal communication throughout all of this recollection, even during times where it's uncomfortable. Just fascinating. Let's keep watching.
And work very, very hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear from the testimony that lots of people have given him he's a hugely talented and capable young man.
Massively talented, yeah.
Just before we get into the relationship and what happened after that moment in the dressing room, if we go back, because you were very specific in your wording in your statement about how the relationship was unwise but not illegal. And the question is of legality centres around your relationship with him before he was 18. Just be really clear, your relationship between when you met him when he was 15 and then when he was 18 was occasional direct messages, no pictures of each other sent to each other, occasional direct messages, and you would say that wasn't really flirtatious at all.
It was just work related, just, career advice, career help.
And no sort of sexual forwardness at all in any of that stuff.
Okay, so during that time, I'm going to go ahead and pause the interview here. It's a 40-minute interview, so that would make an awfully long episode here. So if you would like to be able to see the rest of it, which I'm assuming you probably will, just let me know in the comments below. So what I've seen, even from this little last part, what I found reassuring, because it's a fairly hinging moment, asking about the prior to 18 to 19 age, that segment of things. And he does not try to overcompensate in this area. It doesn't seem like he's adding a bunch of details. He's not packing his narrative. That also lets me know that he's not feeling a level of anxiety around that, nor the need to do so. And then even down at the very, very end, his simple response is a no shake, whereas it could have been an absolutely not, or no way in any way, or any other verbal way that he could have said that would have been coming across as more overcompensating than how he did. So what I'm at least drawing from this portion of the interview so far is that, yes, while the relationship did exist, while it was questionable in general, it seems as though he's being honest when he's saying that it was not an illegal thing, that it was not set up to be a grooming situation, which many people are mostly concerned about due to the age of the person. Now, whether or not it was intentionally a grooming situation or not is also another thing in and of itself, because perhaps Schofield didn't intend on it to be grooming, but by its very nature, with the doors that are opening, with the closeness that develop, it could still be seen as unintentional grooming. So there is a lot that goes into this. This is a pretty intense interview. It was a regrettable decision done by somebody, and he seems to be taking ownership of that as of right now. So let me know if you would like to see the rest of the interview in the comments below. If you have any other suggestions or anything like that, let me know. I am going to be still continuing into my reality TV, true crime, the normal things that are here on the channel. But if there are any other things that I have not considered, yeah, the comments is the best way to let me know. I have a link tree in the description of this video as well. You can go and reach out to my socials or Patreon or anything like that. But without further ado, that's all that I've got for the day. My name is Logan, and you have been oh so awesome, as you always are, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.